Welcome to B&B's LEGO EVO, the series where we take a look at the evolution of themes, sub-themes and everything related and see how they've changed over the years and what the future may hold. And this time we are keeping to our train month, looking on the evolution of LEGO locomotives and see if they have what it takes to break our break count. I will be proving them according to the power system that was mainly used. Special trains like the Disney or Christmas ones do not count. We start in the 4.5 era, that went from 66 to 69, and this period went on batteries with a big battery box that needed to go on the back of the locomotive and was linked with a small cable. And also it had the classic blue train tracks. And start with the birth on the unrealistic blue locomotive. This one we can put into two groups. And let's start with the push trains, or the non-motorized. Sets like 111 and 114. These were smaller as there was no need to have the motor on them. But this also gave a problem, and they did not solve this very well. As you can see, the bodies are a bit too small, as the main parts still needed to fit the blue rails that the motorized trains were running on. Then we have the next three sets. These locomotives are bigger as they needed to hold the 4.5 volt motor inside, but they do look better. The locomotive from set 113 is also available as a single standout part in set 112. The wheels on these have some rubber on them to make the momentum from the motor get transferred onto the tracks. The year after, they really pick up their game. And the next line, the black trains, they come in a both motorized and a push version. They looked bigger. They also looked more like the real deal, and that made the consumer take more to them. I have seen a lot of these trains or parts of them in bags, but have never seen the remnants of the blue ones. This is also the time for experiments. For example, the link between locomotives and wagons at this time is a simple hook, but that is not the easiest to get from each other, so they had to do something about that. With that, we move up one more year, and here we find the super train set, and it's also here we find the first version of a part that is still in use in some way today, the magnetic train wagon link. That made it a lot easier to change around the wagons. The train in this does not look as good as the year before, but the link itself was really an eye-opener this year. And with that, we jump out of this era and into the next. This is shared by both the 4.5 volt system but also a 12 volt system that ran to 1991, where it was replaced by the 9 volt system, but all that in due time. The locomotive for the 4.5 volt system was able to run on the 12 volt tracks, but not the other way around. This is because the 12 volt system was powered from a transformer, just like a model train. This means that it needs to get its power from the rail tracks. And just like you do on a Macklin train set, you power it by a third rail in the middle. You also see this in some real-life metro systems. The first 12 sets came in '69 with 720 and 721. These had something that we have seen before. A train set with wagons and tracks, but also the locomotive as a single part set. These was bigger and looked more like the World War II German trains that Denmark also got some of after the war. As these was powered by a transformer, they had no need for the battery pack. In '70 we got the next push train, number 126. This one I do have. The one I have had been at some point modified to run on a 4.5 volt system, but I decided to build it back to the original. There will for some time in this video still be some push trains, as they are released all the way up to 1991. Also this year we got the small train of 722. This one looked like they were trying to find out how small they could build a train with a 12 volt motor inside. Also, after 4 years with trains, did we get the first locomotive built on a diesel engine. It was built on the 12 volt platform with a look like a cooling grid on the front. Also worth noting from this time is that the numbers on the locomotives are the set numbers, like this one is 723. Now we have gotten a year without a new train set. Up to this point we have gotten a new set every year. But the most interesting thing to note about the next year's train set in '72 is that it is one more time to the 4.5 volt system with a battery box. But they have improved the way they hide it. Now it is no longer a black box after the locomotive, but a way nicer goods wagons that does not look so much out of place. There is also a new 12 volt build over a local work train with a crane and a tipping wagon. In '74 we get the first locomotive with a real World Rail Company logo on it. But it is not the Danish National Railroad. No, it is the Deutsche Bundesbahn. And there's a good reason for that. The country that has possible the most model trains is Germany. They also have a large number of big manufacturers of model trains like Macklin and Fleischmann. So it is natural to go after this demographic. And we'll be seeing more of these Deutsche Bahn models when we move into the 80s. Let's jump one more time to '76 and look at the Western train. There was train sets in between here, but there are nothing special to tell about. But this is the first model we have after the trains of the old West. But it is also the first time we have minifigures with it. These are from the first series, not the modern ones we know, but they were still there. Now that we are past the first 10 years, let's look at some numbers. There was released 27 locomotives up to this time. That is not something we are going to see when we move forward, as the 60s was a golden time for model railroads. But in the 70s and 80s the demand began to fail. And here in almost 2020, it has become a niche hobby and not something that every kid have. In '77, did we get another model licensed under the DB brand. and this model looks like it was built over the class 111, which real life counterpart was built between 74 and 86. So I think it is a good offer for its inspiration. It is also keeping with the red and black color scheme of both DB and the Danish National Railroads. This is also the first model that is built over an electric engine. Now let's jump to 1980. Here was released nothing less than 7 locomotives. 2 of these were push ones, 4 was for the 12 volt, and only 1 was made for the 4.5 volt. Personally, I think this is too much for the same year, as it might confuse consumers regarding of what to get to their children, and then they decide to go out and buy something else. But with all that said, this is also the first time we have the modern minifigures as part of all the sets. We also move into the 4-cipher system of the model code. Now let's pull out the set number 7740 to look at it a little bit closer. This is the first passenger train set we have that is built over a more modern looking type of system, where we have a locomotive in the front, some cars, and then an end wagon, from where it is possible to drive the trains from the other end, thereby making the locomotive push the wagons instead of pulling them. Something else to note from this year is that the old blue wheels was discontinued and replaced with the new light grey ones. This was one more step in making everything look more real. Also, to the 12 volt system, it was possible to get lights and stretching parts that is more assembled of what we know from the model world. Last time I talked about the more modern type of trains. Now here we have the EMU type, or the electric motorized units. These two you probably best know from the metro or high-speed trains. But in 81 we got the first model of this type to the LEGO world. And it looks nice and show how far we've come since the 1960s. But we do still have a long way to go. As we move to 83, I just have to go back a bit to the 80s trains, as they was trying to make round stream locomotives instead of the usual square ones we were seeing. Also look here on the details on the set 7727. Here we have connecting bars on the wheels, numbers, buffers, and all these details make this model look just super nice. Now we jump one last time to 85. Here we got the last 4 sets of this era. We get a stream push-along train with 2 passenger cars. There's not much to be said about this set, as it looks like it was released as a low-cost model. Next we have a stream cargo train, and yet again there's nothing much to be said about this one. But before we move to the MPV of this year, we have the diesel train with a shell wagon and 2 motorcycles on it. But the undisputed MPV of this year is the high-speed train. And what better way to end an era than a train heading to the future with 300 km per hour, where there's 10 minifigures width and a small track side platform. As we one more time have gone 1 decade down the line, let's look at how many trains we have gotten these past 10 years. And this time we have only gotten 16. Here we end part 1 of this trip down the tracks. Next time we look at the 9-volt system and also see the end of the train theme as it becomes part of the city. So if you don't want to miss that, then hit the subscribe button and ring that bell. But before we finally end this video, let's look at some honorable mentions that was not placed for on the main part of this video. Thanks for watching this video. We continue the train month next Monday. Here we are going to look at my favorite train set. Also, come and hang out with me on the live stream. Here I build sets and chat with you guys. So until next time, remember, just keep building!